Hello, guys. So here I want to talk about the 1978 movie Superman. Now, I've mentioned before that this is probably the first movie that I can remember seeing as a 4 or 5 year old kid. But there were a couple of scenes in this movie that, having watched it again, I'm thinking, what the hell is this film? Is this a movie made for kids? Two scenes in particular stood out to me that I thought, well, these are very adult references that I wasn't expecting to find in a 1978 movie that I was watching as an infant, as a child, and which this movie is a PG. It's a parental guidance here in the UK, and I don't know that anyone else has really picked up on this, but I certainly noticed it while I was watching. So the first scene that I wanted to talk about occurs about an hour into the film. This is our introduction to the Daily Planet. So it starts out, we're seeing Jimmy Olsen taking some pictures of Lois Lane, asking her to smile, and she's writing a story. And what you learn pretty quickly is that Lois has a problem with spelling. So she's asking how to spell certain words. The first one is bloodletting. How many T's in bloodletting? I think she asks, and Jimmy says two. And then she asks, well, how do you spell massacre? And then Jimmy helps her spell the word massacre. Okay, fairly innocuous. If you're a 5 year old kid, then, no harm, no foul. This is pretty fine up to this point. And then there's a point where I think Perry comes along and he's reading one of Lois's stories. And he's looking at it and he says, "There's only one P in rapist," and I'm like shocked. I'm like, "What is this? Is this a kids movie?" Okay, that seems to be sort of a one-off. But then, just sort of a minute or two later, once we're introduced to Clark Kent, in Metropolis at the Daily Planet for the first time. I think Clark is talking to Jimmy, maybe, and you can hear Perry speaking to Lois. And Lois says something like, "Oh, do you remember my dynamite expose on the sex and drug orgies at the senior citizens' homes?" And I'm like, what? What? What is this doing in a movie that's a PG? And of course, 5 year old me would not have picked up on that. Like I wouldn't have picked up on this at all. And maybe I wouldn't have picked up on it if it wasn't for the fact that I had the subtitles on at the time that I was watching the film. But yeah, massacre, bloodletting, okay, fine. Mentioning the word rapist in a kids movie, or mentioning sex and drug orgies at a senior citizens home. There's also something about Perry saying, "Hey, you're basically writing muck. This is tabloid stuff. What is it that you're writing, Lois?" And Lois says, "Hey, it's got everything you want. It's got sex, it's got drugs, it's got violence, and you've got the ethnic angle, whatever that means. I don't know. Depends on your imagination what that means." There's also, I think, in the same scene a reference to a sex maniac. Uh, you know, anyway, I wouldn't have noticed this in the movie as a child, but yeah, it's in there. Go back and see that scene. It's the introduction to Lois and Perry and Jimmy at the Daily Planet. Go and watch it. Put on the subs if you've got the movie, and you'll hear all this. But yeah, completely shocking to me. I wasn't expecting that whatsoever. The second scene that I noticed was the one about 2 hours into the movie, where Otis and Ava and Lex are trying to reprogram the nuclear missile. Or at least this is the one that Otis is meant to be reprogramming. Lex plays the ambulance driver, and Ava is going to be the distraction for the army. So this is the army missile. There's two missiles in this movie. There's an army one and there's a navy one, but this is the army one. So what happens? So there's an overturned car, and Ava, who, I don't know if it's a blonde wig or she has her hair colored blonde, she's in a low cut red dress, passed out by the side of the road. And of course, the army soldiers happen upon her. And one of the soldiers says, she's passed out, she's having difficulty breathing. What should we do, sir? And the his superior, who notices Ava, blonde hair, red dress, low cut top, notices her and says, "Oh, well, I suggest a vigorous chest massage, and if that doesn't work, mouth to mouth." And so the soldier's like, "Yes, sir," and is about to carry out those orders, and his superior stops him and says, "Hey, soldier, I wouldn't give an order to one of my soldiers to do anything that I was not prepared to do myself." So he takes it upon himself to carry out this momentous task. And so he gets down on the ground and he says, "Gather round, soldiers," and they form a circle around him while he's above Ava. And then he says, "About face," making them turn around so they're not watching him, but they're kind of, you can't see what's going on. It's kind of shielded. So then, of course, Lex shows up as the ambulance driver, here to sort of help this woman. And after Otis has reprogrammed the missile, he ends up doing it incorrectly, which is the reason why there's two missiles in the movie. What happens is that eventually Ava ends up waking up and she says, "Enough, enough, enough, enough." And at least in this cut of the movie, she says something like, "What was it that you had for lunch today?" And there's a bunch of innuendo in this scene, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that I wouldn't have picked up on as a 5-year-old kid watching this film. But I just thought it's quite interesting, the sort of the adult references in this movie. And this scene is played for laughs. It's very light-hearted. There's some sort of the sort of hurdy-gurdy type music that you hear playing when Otis is doing something not particularly smart. Otis ends up taking a beating in the back of the ambulance when Lex finds out that Otis has gotten the coordinates wrong on this missile, necessitating a second missile, the Navy missile, to be reprogrammed by Ava instead. But yeah, just some stuff in the movie that I just completely was not expecting to find. And I wonder if anybody else has noticed this as well, these kind of adult references, these references that you're not going to really understand unless you're a bit more mature, and you're certainly not going to get if you're still in primary or elementary school like I was. So guys, tell me what you think. Do you remember these scenes? Do you remember seeing these scenes growing up? Maybe you saw the Superman movie when you were a little bit older than I was, and perhaps you saw it for what it was. I don't think I would have understood what was going on when I was that young. Certainly I did not anyway. But yeah, did you notice them? Have you seen this movie recently? What did you think? Were you as shocked as I was to find these very adult references in a kids movie? This is, as I said, it's a PG, it's parental guidance in the UK. So I don't know, was I too young to be seeing it at 5 years old without an adult around? I would think. I mean, usually you would think not for a PG. Most PGs are pretty safe for a kid to see. But yeah, let me know what you think. Pop a message in the comments, and yeah, let me know if you noticed these too. Beyond that, guys, I will bid you a good day, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Goodbye.